There is a quiet rule that many people grow up believing. That kindness sounds like softness. That respect sounds like shrinking. And that being good means never taking up too much space. So the word sorry becomes a shield, not always because something wrong was done, but because something inside feels wrong for simply existing. And maybe you've noticed this, how some people apologize before they speak. Apologize when they ask for help. Apologize when someone else makes a mistake. Sometimes they even apologize for how they feel. But have you ever wondered what kind of inner world creates a person who feels the need to say sorry for everything? It rarely begins with a word. It begins with a feeling, a subtle one, easy to miss. The feeling that your presence might inconvenience someone, that your needs might be too much, that your voice might disrupt something fragile. So instead of asking, you soften. Instead of expressing, you dilute. Instead of existing fully, you negotiate your right to be there. An apology becomes the language of that negotiation. But here's something most people don't realize. Over-apologizing is not really about politeness. It's about permission. Permission to speak, permission to take up space, permission to be imperfect without consequences. And when that permission was never safely given, you learn to ask for it constantly, even when no one is holding it back. Think about this. Why would someone say sorry when they've done nothing wrong? Why would a person instinctively take responsibility for things outside their control? Why would they carry guilt that doesn't belong to them? Because somewhere, and at some point, responsibility became a form of safety. In certain environments, being at fault wasn't just about being wrong, it was about keeping peace. Maybe growing up, conflict didn't feel safe. Maybe mistakes were met with criticism instead of understanding. Maybe emotions were dismissed, or worse, punished. So the mind adapts. It learns something very specific. If something goes wrong, it's safer if it's my fault. Because if it's your fault, then maybe you can fix it. And if you can fix it, then maybe things won't fall apart. So apology becomes control, a quiet attempt to stabilize unpredictable environments. Even when the environment is no longer dangerous, even when the people around you aren't expecting it. The body remembers even when the situation has changed. And that's where the confusion begins. Because from the outside, it looks like kindness. It looks like humility. It looks like emotional intelligence. But inside, it can feel like constant self-correction, constant monitoring, constant shrinking. Have you ever noticed how exhausting that can be? To measure every word before it leaves your mouth, to replay conversations afterward, wondering if you were too much, to feel responsible for how others feel, even when you didn't cause it. There is a quiet tension in that, like holding your breath in a room where no one asked you to be silent, and yet it feels necessary because the alternative feels dangerous. What happens if you don't apologize? What happens if you take up space without softening it? What happens if you say something directly without cushioning it in guilt? For many people, that doesn't feel like confidence. It feels like risk. So they choose safety, even if that safety comes at the cost of themselves. There is another layer to this, a deeper one. Because over-apologizing is not only about fear, it's also about identity. Some people don't just use apology, they become the kind of person who apologizes. The easy one, the understanding one, the one who never creates problems, and over time, that identity becomes reinforced. People appreciate it. They describe you as kind, as thoughtful, as self-aware. But rarely do they ask, at what cost? Because when you're always the one who adjusts for you? When you're always the one who makes space, where do your needs go? They don't disappear, they settle. Like sediment at the bottom of a river, unseen, unspoken, but slowly changing the shape of everything. This is where something important happens. The apology stops being about others and starts becoming about how you see yourself. If you constantly apologize, your mind begins to associate your existence with error. with inconvenience, with something that needs to be corrected before it's accepted. And over time, that creates a quiet form of self-doubt, not loud enough to notice immediately, but persistent enough to shape how you move through the world. You hesitate more. You question your instincts. You soften your boundaries before they're even formed. And you begin to wonder, am I too much? Did I say something wrong? Should I have stayed quiet? But here's the paradox. The more you apologize unnecessarily, the more your mind believes there must be something to apologize for. Even when there isn't, it becomes a loop, a subtle one, but powerful. And yet, none of this comes from weakness. It comes from adaptation, from intelligence, from a nervous system that learned how to navigate complexity, how to reduce tension, how to survive in environments where being easy felt safer than being authentic. That matters, because it changes how this pattern should be understood. Not as something broken, but as something learned. And what is learned can also be unlearned, but not through force, not through criticism, not through telling yourself to just stop, because this behavior is not a habit of the mind alone. It's a habit of the body, a reflex, a feeling that moves faster than thought. So instead of asking, why do I do this? A softer question might emerge. When did it start to feel safer to apologize than to simply exist? That question doesn't demand an answer. It invites awareness, and awareness changes things in ways effort cannot. There is also something else to notice, something quieter. Not all apologies are the same. Some come from empathy, from genuine accountability, from care. And those are not the apologies being spoken about here. The ones being explored are the automatic ones, the unnecessary ones, the ones that appear before you've even had time to think. I'm sorry, can I ask something? Sorry, this might be a stupid question. Sorry, I didn't mean to bother you. Sorry for how I feel. But what if those sentences were paused for a moment? Not removed, just observed. What would happen if the apology wasn't there? What would remain? Sometimes, just a simple truth. Can I ask something? I have a question. I need help. I feel hurt. And maybe that feels exposed, because without the apology, there is nothing cushioning the vulnerability. No buffer, no safety net. Just the raw expression. And that can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. But within that discomfort, there is also something else, something subtle, clarity. Because when apology is removed from places it doesn't belong, what remains is honesty, and honesty has a different kind of weight. Not heavy, just real. Still, this shift doesn't happen overnight, because this pattern wasn't built overnight, it was shaped over time, through moments, experiences, reinforcements. So the undoing of it feels less like breaking a habit and more like loosening something that has been tightly held for a long time. There may be moments where the word sorry still appears automatically, before awareness can catch it, and that's okay. Yeah, because this isn't about perfection. It's about noticing. Noticing when apology is coming from genuine care and when it's coming from fear. Noticing when you are taking responsibility and when you are absorbing what was never yours to carry. Noticing when you are being kind and when you are being small. Those distinctions matter more than any rule about when to apologize or not. Because this isn't really about language. It's about relationship. Your relationship with yourself. Do you feel allowed to exist without explanation? Do you feel allowed to take up space without apology? Do you feel allowed to feel without softening it for others? These are quiet questions, but they shape everything. And maybe for a long time, the answer has been no. Not because you chose it, but because it was safer that way. But safety can evolve. It can expand. It can become something that includes you, not just others. And in that expansion, something begins to shift. You might still be kind, still thoughtful, still aware of others, but no longer at the cost of yourself. And slowly, the apology changes. It becomes intentional, not automatic, grounded, not reflexive. And in that shift, you don't become someone different. You become someone more whole. Because the goal was never to stop being considerate. It was never to become cold or indifferent. It was simply to stop apologizing for being human. There's nothing wrong with caring about how others feel, but there is also nothing wrong with existing without constant justification. Both can exist together. And maybe that's the quiet truth beneath all of this. You were never too much. You were never a burden. You were never something that needed to be softened in order to be accepted. You were simply someone who learned that safety sometimes required shrinking. And now you're beginning to see that it doesn't always have to. If this felt familiar, if parts of this felt like something you've lived quietly for a long time, then maybe nothing needs to change all at once. Maybe it begins with something smaller, something softer. The next time the word sorry rises, pause. Not to stop it, not to judge it, just to notice it. Because within that small moment, there is space. And within that space, there is choice. And sometimes, that is where everything begins to change.